Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. If you are new here, please subscribe to the channel, and if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for sticking with me. Today I'll be showing you how to make this lovely bubu, and if it's something you're interested in, kindly keep watching and let's get into the video. For this bubu, I'll be making use of this Ankara fabric of 6 yards, although I'll be making use of just 3 yards of it. And then I have my leftover bridal satin doll face. I'll be using it to cut out the pattern for the neckline. So I have my scissors and my tape as usual, and my chalk. I won't be using a zipper for this dress. To begin, we're going to be starting with this pattern paper. We're going to first of all draft the neckline, then transfer the design to our fabric. So what you want to do first is to get your pattern paper, fold it into two, and then draw a starting point on the top part of the paper. Next, I went ahead to insert the neckline, which is the shoulder length of 8 inches. I marked 8 inches on the paper, which is shoulder length of 16 inches divided by 2, which is 8. Then I went ahead to mark the armhole length. We will not be using this armhole, but I just marked it for reference purposes. After marking the neckline, I placed my tape from the point I drew, and I marked 8 inches depth for the neckline. It's going to be a v-neck, so making it 8 inches. You can make yours deeper, you can make yours up to 5, depends on how much you want. So for the shoulder, I made use of 4.5 inches width. So I just marked 4.5 inches and I connected the points to give me the V-line effect. From there, the next thing you want to do is measure the length of how you want the pattern to appear on your fabric. I made mine 21 inches. So you can make yours as long as 25. You can even make yours to touch the ground depending on how long you want your design on the neck to be. So I marked 21 inches from the shoulder line and I drew a straight line. I placed my tape on the shoulder again and I marked down 11 inches from the shoulder. The next thing I did was on the shoulder line, that same shoulder line, I marked 3 inches inwards and I marked the line just to give it like a new shoulder, but just watch what we are going to do. So from these 3 points, these 3 inches here, we are going to draw a straight line going downwards to connect with the 11 inches. So what I'm doing is I'm just making sure it's a straight line from the 3 inches upwards to 11 inches downwards. So I'm going to use my ruler to connect a straight line. From the 11-inch mark, you want to extend it outwards by 3 inches and draw the line out. So I'm trying to copy this design by the screen on the screen. So I'm going to put up the picture. As you can see, it came out by the side, so that's what I'm doing. You can work with your own measurements to give you your desired shape. I'm just trying to recreate this design. So yeah, from there we're just going to draw another straight line going downwards to meet that initial 21 inches we marked. So yeah, just go ahead and draw a straight line. Go ahead and open up your paper because things are about to get serious. So just flip it open and extend all the lines outwards to give you the same measurement. So I placed my ruler on the neckline, on the shoulder line, and I just extended the lines outwards. After that, place your tape on the neckline and just extend the same amount of inches, which is 8 inches on this side. I went ahead to mark another 8 inches from the midpoint, so I made use of the center point of the paper. As you can see, that folded part is pointing, so we know the midpoint. So I marked 8 inches there, and then the next thing was to extend the line further. After that, I replaced the space between the V-neck line on the right side, and it was about 3 inches, so I marked same 3 inches outward on the neckline. and then I use my ruler to connect the v-neck to meet the 8 inches for the neckline. So we have the v-neck. Our v-neck is already coming to shape, and this is what it should look like from the front pattern. I also went ahead to extend the shoulder line by another 3 inches for the left side, because we did the same thing on the right side. So whatever we got there, I'm just replacing it on this side. I measured the length I had of my shoulder for the left part, which was 7 inches. So I marked 7 inches so I can get a straight line from this point upwards. After that, use your ruler to connect a straight line coming downwards. Again, I placed my tape on that line and I marked another 11 inches downwards. So I marked 11 inches on the line, which is approximately the midpoint. After marking that, I marked the midpoint of the 21 inches as well, and I used my curve ruler to connect the lines. You really need to use your free hand to give it that perfect curve, because the curved ruler wasn't really doing it. So at the end of the day, I ditched it and I used my free hand to just trace the lines together. So if you take a very good look at the design, you will notice that the neckline is not at the midpoint directly. It shifted out a little, so it kind of gave more room for one side, which is the right side, to be able to fill that part more. So I'm just going to be coming out by 1.5 inch from the midpoint, and I'll mark it there. Another thing I'm going to do is to mark it from the midpoint upwards. So from the midpoint, I placed my tape on that point to know where exactly 8 inches is, and then I created like a T there so that I can mark it on both angles. I just placed my ruler and I connected it to give me a V. So what I would have done was to give it kind of like a curve, but I ended up using a V. So you can do that on your own pattern. You can give it like a slant curve. You'll see me trying to do that shortly. So I just connected both necklines to meet it, and we have a new V neckline. So because the sides of our bubu is going to be slant, I'm going to be coming down by half an inch for the shoulder slope. I'm not going to be coming by complete 1 inch this time around. So I'll mark half inches downwards on both shoulders and give it a slant. Guys, this was the point I realized I should have given this neckline a little curve. So I've made it a lot prettier. My attempts failed, by the way, because my marker was misbehaving, but I tried at least. But I still ended up with the normal v-neck. We're done with this front pattern, so you can go ahead and cut your piece out of the pattern paper. This is what it looks like after we're done cutting. You can make yours wider, but this is just how I want mine. So yeah, you can make it different shapes as well. I'll be transferring this to my doll face setting. I'll be cutting exactly what I cut out here on my satin fabric. Time to cut out our Ankara fabric. So this person is quite tall, so I had to use the width of the fabric and not the length. So I turned it to the other side that is longer, and I put the measurement, the full length of the client. I cut out 2 pieces, which is about full tape. I measured full tape twice and I cut it out. So we have 2 pieces of the front and back fabric. This is what I mean when I say I have 2 pieces. So I have 1 piece for the front and 1 piece for the back, both on fold. The first thing we're going to do is to trace our neckline, which is 16 inches divided by 2. We have 8 inches. So I'm marking 8 inches from the folded parts inwards. From the 8-inch mark, I'm going to be coming down by 1 inch, and that's where I'm going to create my slants. So I'm going to be using my ruler to connect the lines together and just place my slants. I'll also be marking my neckline from that point and just create the slants like so. So it looks like we're creating an armhole, but we're not. We're just creating a slope to the end of the fabric. After doing that, I'm going to go ahead and cut it out. At the point where my hands are going to pass, I'm going to mark 12 inches. So we take out ½ inch for sewing allowance on both sides, and we're going to be left with 11 inches. So I just came in and I marked 12 inches again, and it's the bust that is going to determine how wide the sleeve part is going to be. So from the other end, I marked the bust measurement and I added extra 4 inches. I'm going to be taking out 1 inch allowance for sewing, and then the remaining 3 inches will be for ease. So on that point, I marked my bust circumference divided by 4, and I added 4 inches, 3 inches for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. So from that point, I just connected it to the sleeve. I also measured the half length and I drew on the waistline. I added the same 4 inches, 3 inches for ease and 1 inch for sewing allowance. After doing this, I went ahead to measure the hip line. I just did that to give it like a template on where I'm going to be covering the bubu form. So from here, I'm going to be connecting the points downwards on a straight line. So I added my allowance on the waistline, on the bust and on the hip. I added 4 inches for allowance. I'm just going to give it a curve from that point and draw a straight line connecting it downwards to the end of the fabric. If you want your bubu to have like a ripple effect on the sides, you can come down on your hip line with about 10 inches, 9 inches, whatever inch you want, and then create a curve from that. We're going to call it the armhole line. So we're just going to create a curve from this point downwards. If the fabric was fuller, I would have done that, but it's not so. Although for this particular tutorial, we are going to be making use of the straight line. This is just like an example of what you can do with your fabric. So we are sticking to the straight line, and that's what we're going to be cutting. This is what it looks like after cutting it out, but we're going to go ahead and cut it. Cut it. We're going to cut it because we want it straight. So I'm cutting off this part. I just try to show you what you can achieve with this same style. After cutting it out, I went back to the neckline to do the main business. So I marked my 8 inches on that point, and then I marked in my shoulder line of 4 inches, which I marked earlier on the pattern paper, and then neck width of 3.5 inches. So after doing that, I went ahead to mark the depth of 8 inches, and I connected the points together. Although we'll be cutting out the back pattern first, so we'll use 2 inches for that, and then we'll cut that out and place the front again and cut it out. So I cut out only the back piece and I left the front piece. With this, I went ahead to place my... Okay, so I didn't cut out the neckline at first because I'll be making use of the pattern to create the neckline. I just went ahead to mark about 2 inches and I gave it a curve as well. I just marked my 8 inches so I know that okay, this is where we're stopping. Then I just cut out a little piece from the neckline in front as well. There's a slit on the front part of this gown, so I went to the lower part and split it into 2. So now we have 2 parts for the front pattern. After splitting it, I'm going to go to my machine and sew from the top part to where I want my slit to stop with about ½ an inch. So I'm going to do that and I'll show you what I have. So for the pocket, I used my leftover fabric. I cut out 8 inches width and in the length of 10 or 9 inches thereabouts. So I just drew a straight line and I created a curve and I cut it out. This is the front part of the dress, so I've gone ahead to sew from the neckline to the end of the fabric. Well, not to the end, but to where we wanted the slit to start from. So from that point, we hemmed the inner part in, and our slit is ready. So go ahead and give it a good press and you're good to go. This is what the design is going to be looking like by the time we cut it out on our satin fabric and we place it here on the neckline. So it's going to be given. So I'm going to go ahead and cut it out and I'll show you what I have. So on the edges, while cutting it out, I gave an extra allowance of about 1/2 inch round, and this is what we have. So I'm going to go ahead to iron my paper stay on it, the lightest one, just to give it like this firm effect. After ironing it, this is what we have. I went ahead to iron the edges with 1/2 inch inwards. So yes, this is where we have. We're going to place it on the front part of the Ankara fabric, and we're just going to sew it. So this is what we have. As you can see, the neckline is not placed on the center. This is the effect we're trying to get, and we cut it. You want to use your scissors to cut out that neckline so you can have your V neckline, and we're good to go. So I'm going to be turning it right sides facing right sides, and I'm going to stitch the V-neck down and give it a notch and all the top stitches I need, and I'll flip it over and give it a good press as well. After turning the neckline and top stitching, this is what we have. We're going to iron it and it's going to come out nicely. So after ironing it, I'm going to go ahead and top stitch round the pattern, following the lines and making sure the sewing is neat. I'm going to stitch on the Ankara fabric. After stitching and ironing it, we're going to turn the back neckline. So I used my bias tape to turn the neckline, and I'm going to place where the shoulder starts from on both sides and sew about 1/2 inch downwards to both sides to the end of the sleeve. So after I was done with the shoulders, I top stitched it just to hold it down and give it a clean finish. And then I measured from the shoulder to the sleeve, and I had 13 inches from the shoulder to around the elbow points, so I cut out the excess fabric. So I opened it up as you can see, and I measured the total length that I have for the sleeve, and I arrived at 24 inches. So I'm doing this because I want to create like a turnover for the sleeve with the satin fabric. I went ahead to place my measurements. I cut out 25 inches length, 1 inch stitching allowance for the sides, and then 3 inches width. So by this point, I had already gone ahead to iron my fold, and then I attached it to the sides of the sleeve. I sewed it right sides facing right sides, and I folded the wrong side in. This is the wrong side I'll be facing up. So I top stitched the lower part and I gave it a good press. So this is the lower part where I top stitched. So yeah, the next thing we're going to do is to sew the sides. I'm going to sew in the allowance of 1 inch on both sides. So I'm really going to fold it right sides facing right sides, and I'm going to stitch on the sides 1 inch to the ground. So while sewing, I marked the point where I wanted my pocket to start from, which is 20 inches, and then I gave space of 7 inches for it. And then on the lower part, I've not hemmed it, so I'm going to go ahead and hem it now, and I'm going to fix my pockets on both sides. I've gone to stitch my pocket neatly, and then I went ahead to hem the lower part as well. So I hemmed it down with about 1/2 inch all around. And yeah, this is basically it for this tutorial. Another thing I did was that for this sleeve, I top stitched on the topmost part of this sleeve. That's on this point. I used my, let's not say top stitch, I used my hand to tack it down with my needle and thread, just to hold it down from falling apart when it is worn. So as you can see, I just used a tiny thread, tiny piece of needle to hold it down together. And yes, that's basically all for this tutorial. So if you are new here, please subscribe to the channel, please turn on notification, and I'll see you in my next video.